Thank you. I'm Taylor Sharp. Welcome to the October 2025 FileMaker Pro User Group meeting, Dallas, Texas. We're here at the new Harmonic Studios, fancy new studio here. Wow. Monroe here is going to give us a first announcement. So, Matt.
Sure. First of all, welcome to the new Harmonic Theater, as we are now dubbing it. Announcement-wise, I think the only thing I want to throw out there is that our friends at the technical recruiting company of Genius Road are looking for a potential FileMaker migration specialist. Effectively, somebody who's versed in FileMaker Server, old versions of FileMaker Server, and helping some company get them up into the cloud. And so if you are interested in a job like that, or know somebody who is looking for a job that has those skill sets, come see us or go onto the Genius Road website and look up those openings and inquire within.
So what's that website?
That geniusroad.com, I think, is their primary website. And good guys there, and they reached out about FileMaker things, and so we're happy to pass that on to folks in the community that may be looking to move in a different direction. So that's what I got. Back to Taylor.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Okay, we have the Build Secure Web Forms with Claire Studio. It's going to be October 9th, the online virtual web conference stream from Claire, so the community live projects. And then coming up October 23rd is access data across systems with AI. So those are the big Claire's projects coming up this month online.
And Vienna Calling in Vienna is actually opening up their registration for their second annual event. That's going to take place next spring.
Spring, you said?
Spring.
Okay, good. Being a call. I'm all ready to go to Europe, so sounds exciting. Okay, well, today we've got Bill and Anil here with Soliant, and they're going to be teaching us about Omniblaze and simulating real-world workloads for FileMaker applications. That's the title. I'm coming because I don't know about it, and I'm really wanting to learn a lot, so I'm kind of excited about this presentation here. But without further ado, Bill and Anil, come on up.
So I got about 4 topics to get through today. Obviously, Omniblaze. I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that we're working on in the AI space, give you some ideas how to sort of architecture approaches. And I've also got a nice, interesting little thing we just kicked off yesterday, so I'll talk to this group about it, and we can get to that towards the end. So my name is Bill Heizer. I am a AWS practice director at Soliant. I see some familiar faces here. I was checking at the register and saw a number of friendly faces out there. So first time I've been to Dallas in terms for this group since the last time that Taylor invited me. And I talked to him the night before that I was going to get a presentation. I said, hey man, there's a snowstorm moving in. Do you think it's going to be that big of a deal? And he said, oh, absolutely not. You know, we get this stuff all the time. It's no big deal. And I was there for 3 days. I ate Hooters and hotel food in time. So thank you, Taylor. I'll finally remember that.
Bitter at all.
So let's kick off with Omniblaze a little bit. Well, I should go through a couple of introductions. Introduce myself. With me today also is 2 people. Anil Badruddin, he is our principal AWS architect. Anil's been with us now for just over a year and some change, and really kicking off some things with AWS with us. And also Carl, I'm going to try the last name, and you'll have to excuse me if I don't get it right, but Jira, and I believe I'm right because I even looked it up last night. He is the application architect with the FileMaker development team, and he is the primary developer of Omniblaze as well as the architect of it. So I've asked him to join us remotely. We can have a little Q&A with him. He'll give you a little bit behind the scenes. So my goal today will be to sort of introduce Omniblaze, walk you through a couple of things, and get a little Q&A going. I love this product. I've been a big fan of it since it's been around internally at Soliant, and I think it just answers some key questions that I, as a developer, have had for many, many years going back, and I think you'll find it to be very useful. So let's start with this real quick. I know there's not a whole lot of people that haven't had this issue, but at the end of the day, I have always come in to realize that there's just certain things that are very difficult to simulate. So how many of you have ever been in that situation where you've got an application you launch, you got 20, 25, maybe 35 users, thing becomes successful, down the road, customer says, well, we got a whole new business division. I want another 75 people. Now you're talking about 100 people that need to run the application. And if you're like me, you go, sure. And then you do your best to try to figure out some ways there. So you really had no real world way to test FileMaker load, whether it be Go or Pro or whatever. The other big scenario is I'm having a performance problem. Or I need to understand why when I add load, I get a particular behavior, whether that be, do I show this in list view? What fields am I displaying that are doing this? What do I have a particular architecture that I've used to do something? I'm seeing performance implications either immediately or as I add load. That is a very difficult thing to simulate. I mean, we've all written something and it works great either locally or on the network with one person. But when you add load or you put reduce in it, you need to understand that. And the third thing I think it really addresses is, being a part of AWS and working on our MSP, our managed services provider, we have thousands of implementations at this point. And what we hear all the time is, well, my application's doing X, getting more hardware. And while there's value in that, in some cases, you don't necessarily know that it's hardware bound. This application will allow you to truly understand, is it hardware based? And leveraging the dynamics of AWS, we can throw different hardware at it, different configurations, and allow you to run those tests with Omniblaze. So, here's a couple key things in there. You're finding bottlenecks. Do I do hardware? Do I, applications how they'll work during peak times. And then from a perspective of what you get out of it, so your users are going to get a whole lot more satisfaction. You're going to be able to retain clients a lot longer. You'll be able to make architectural changes and understand exactly what they mean. Users want better performance. Reliability, risk management comes into play. Simply the fact that if you don't know the answer to it, but you can get some definitive empirical results out of Omniblaze to run something, then I have facts to stand on. I know that I can say, yes, we're good at 75, we're good at 80, we're good at 120, but I need this hardware. You'll have some empirical evidence to support that. One of the reasons that I also sort of tangentially love this is while I was at FileMaker in the engineering, we would do load testing. We do standard fade, find, add, delete, edit records. Well, we had a whole big Citrix environment to do it. So we would run these and you'd have this keyboard mapping and you'd run through the series of the things. That was an extraordinarily expensive hardware option for this. I'm not exaggerating when I say this is literally pennies on the dollar to do that. We'll go through some pricing, but I think you'll find that to get these answers will not cost very much. And we're leveraging our partnership with AWS and our scalability models that we have now and all of our partnerships to get these numbers down, utilizing spot instances and stuff to do that. And then obviously there's the confidence you'll have in your application, right? I know it's going to work at this particular level. So there's a whole bunch of use cases here. I think we've kind of covered them, but at the end of the day, the only one that I really think that is extraordinarily important is providing some absolute empirical benchmarks on how your application will perform based on a particular work set load. 1 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 200, or as some people come to me, and I've heard this as many times, so we have this vertical solution, Bill, and it's going to be the latest and greatest thing. It's going to be so awesome. We're going to sell it to every person in this industry, and it works awesome right now. Like, well, what kind of load testing have you done? And they say, well, we've got our biggest clients doing 75, but we think we're going to be able to get 1,000 users on this thing. I don't really have to answer the question anymore. I can just go, here, let's just run the test real quick, because we know how that's going to end, right? You've got to build for certain ways. My whole point is to give you some idea that you'll have those benchmarks and you'll have some ways to do some things. Another big benefit for you as a developer is techniques. We all know there's a million ways to do the same thing, right? Do I use a global to do this? Do I display this field here? What's it going to do as a list view? Do I access form? What's it access on my dependency tree? How will calculations affect this? This tool will allow you the ability. We use it a lot in this way where I've got production environment, I've got development environment. I'll point Omniblaze at a development environment and I'll run a couple of code testing changes. I've got the empirical results from production. I make this change and I see how that affects performance and load on primary subsystems of both the server and the application load at the client level. So you'll be able to get some real insights to how your development techniques change the behavior and the impact it has on your solution delivery. So let's just do one and walk you through that. So I'm going to bail out of here. We're going to pop over to here and let's go to get a new window here. Open this up. Let's go over to here. All right, so I'm going to log into the Omniblaze console here, and we're going to pull up a couple things. I'm going to walk you through the beginning setup and how it sort of works architecturally. We've got Carl to answer us any questions. So this is important for me for you all to understand. The signing up is pretty simple. And then you're doing your first step is you are adding a domain. This is where your FileMaker server exists. Simply doing that, you're simply going to click on new domain. You will provide, that. So I'll just I have the wrong glasses on to do it with. I think this is correct. If not, I'll end up doing a different thing here. So I just don't remember off the top of my head. But at the end of the day, all we're doing is we are registering it. It's going to hand you back a text string. You'll need to take that text string, insert it into your DNS. Then when the application runs, it will validate that, and you'll have that host available to you. The whole point in having hosts, that is sort of two pieces. One is to register the number of hosts you want to test on, production, development, UAT. Maybe you guys work with multiple clients at the same time. You can register multiple domains inside the same Omniblaze account. So you have one for client A, client B, client C, client A's production, client A's development, whatever you need in there. The whole purpose in the text entry into the DNS is to validate that you are owner of that and you have the access to that. So those tests are performed and validated every time a test is run. So that way, you get some security in there to validate that against. So at the end of the day, then you just go to your configurations. And I'm going to run a test here right now. And at the end of the day, you can see I ran one this morning. I ran one here where I'm going to talk to this particular name of this. I'm going to how many agents I want and what particular version I want it to run. I'm going to run it for a period of time. So let's just configure this one. So let's not do that many right now. Let's just do 20. We'll do a 15-minute run. We support all your sort of recent versions of FileMaker in there. So you can choose which version you'd like to test to run these. And then you can provide some tests on it. You can then provide the file to go to, the username and password to that. Those are all stored encrypted in encryption keys so that we don't keep those around. What file you go to and what script you want to run. So I can pass some parameters and I can also enable plugins. So in your particular solution, if you need to deploy those plugins to the client so they can run those things, you just click this, it will run those and deploy your plugins into there. So keep in mind that we need to tell what region we want to do in. So this is beautiful because your application may perform as you go to the cloud. You may need to test from the East Coast or the West Coast or some other region across the world. We'll talk about availability there. But you can do some interesting testing where if you have your server on the East Coast and you need users from the West Coast to test that, you can understand the impact that's going to have in there. And what we're telling here is how many of these agents to kick up here, right? So I want this many agents here. And agents are going to spin up. They are true FileMaker desktop applications running that version on Windows machines, right? So we're going to get an actual load test in there. So I can see that this particular test is going to cost me about $1.60 to run this thing. So, testing up a number of users in there. So I'm going to kick this out. Let me edit that real quick. Let's change it. Let's go to 20. We're going to do 15 minutes and we've got save. So let's bring that application up real quick with that file. All right, so I've got this. So the application is going to launch off these and I'm going to start through it. So I'm going to go ahead and just kick it off. So that is literally all you have to do from start to finish to get a load test to run, right? I'm going to run, I'm going to tell how many agents I want. I'm going to kick it off. It's going to provision those agents in AWS. It is going to kick all of those off. It's going, once they're available, they're going to start running and they're going to connect to the application. They're going to run whatever script I pointed it to, and it's going to start generating those things. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes here. So first of all, global availability. So AWS spans about 120 different availability zones, 38 different geographical locations. Soliant.Cloud is implemented in every single one of them. We have enabled Omniblaze in the ones that are on your right. Is that correct? Yeah. And we have capacity currently provisioned out at 28,000 agents available. We could easily triple that, quadruple that as we need to. But one of the things that I'd like to point out is the fact that we tried, and Carl could comment on this, we give him an opportunity to chat here a little bit, tried a couple of different cloud providers, quite a couple of different things, and AWS really is provisioning there. We're able to get spot instances and get that kind of scalability in there. We weren't able to do that elsewhere. Taylor's raising his hand, he's got a question, so I'll let him ask.
Well, one of the question is, we're in Dallas, Texas. We're in the middle of the country. Kind of us up through Chicago, St. Louis, right down. Mm-hmm. we're not on either of the coasts.
Absolutely. So the question was, just for those people who couldn't hear, was, hey, we're in the middle of the country. We're in Dallas. There actually is availability zones directly in here. We can implement those. We have chosen to sort of choose the big geographic regions, but individual implementations for testing can easily be done in those what are called local zones. They're just a subdivision of the regions, but at the end of the day, applications that you want to run and try to run there. And we can implement Omniblaze in those local zones as well. Now, local zones have some capacity differences. I wouldn't imagine it would affect the number of those there and the number of instances you'd be able to run, but for the most part, it can be done.
It's a little different.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. We mostly run into it in other areas. But bottom line, we've got huge capacity here and we've got global availability to reach. So just about, I would say 99% of the time, we'll have no issues implementing even something very close to you. All right, so while that's running there, also two things here. So we've always had this sort of ability to kind of deal with having applications work to do metering and performance testing through any type of web publishing stuff. So then you can hit data API and the OData API, custom web publishing, ODBC, whatever it may be. What we've always lacked is the ability to run true pro clients. So Go and Pro are basically the same engine. They both run Draco, and that's the kind of experience we want to do. Where this comes into play is Omniblaze is directly fit to, so that Pro and Go will now have an application, load testing application built for it. So this fills in a pretty big gap for us. The cost model here, I'm just going to get it out of the way. It's dirt cheap. $50 to register a host. There's some back-end stuff that we've got to do to register it, and you're going to run that. Now, you can register 15 hosts. If you run a test on it is when that charge will incur. And then the cheapest piece of it here is 32 cents per agent hour. So to run on our example here, I'm going to run against one active host. I'm going to run 5 agents at a 60-minute test. Your entire month is going to be $50 for the host, and then $159. So it's basically $159 to run that test. So you can run multiple different tests. Here's an example. One host, I'm going to run 3 different tests for the month. One with 5 agents running for an hour. I'm going to have another test I'm going to run. It's 100 agents running for 15 minutes. I'm going to have another test where I have 250 agents running for 30 minutes, $99. So there, you could register as many hosts as you want, only charge at the host level when you specifically run that host for that. So let's take a look back over here and see if our application is kicked off yet. It's still provisioning agents here, waiting for this. This is going to kick off any second now. While we're waiting on this, Carl, would you like to jump in here? Let me see if I can get you up on the screen real quick.
Sorry.
You work on that while I talk to this. So you can see now my agents are connected. They're just spinning up and they're going to, start creating records. This is a very simple script. All it does, add some records. It takes a parameter in, and I've gotten those 20 connections and they're just banging away and starting to hit on that. Are we good with Carla?
We are good, man.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Okay, and so if you notice on Bill's screen and the admin console, you notice that the username for every FileMaker client, so like the instance session name, it's called Blaze underscore something like test underscore 123. That's a unique name for every single FileMaker Pro agent. And the reason why we do that is somebody asked me, well, I want to route incoming FileMaker Pro agents to different scripts. I don't want to run them all on the same script. So I want 50 to run script A and then 50 script B. And this is an easy way to do that because you have a unique number for every username. So you use get as number and then get username inside of that get as number. And then you get a unique number for every agent. You can say like anything below 50 should go and perform script number 1. And then everything above or equal, or actually above 50 would go and run script number B. So that's an easy way to route stuff. Omniblaze, you can only set one script at a time, but we give the power to the developer to do a lot inside of FileMaker. So your logic runs in the script workspace. We could have created graphic user interface automations in another language, like something with Python for desktop automations. But I wanted people to not have to learn any new tool. You just use your existing skill set, which is in FileMaker in the script workspace. You automate your graphic user interface. You create a script that mimics an actual user flow, such as creating a new customer record, generating a report, sending emails, deleting records, things like that. Anything that mimics an actual user behavior. Sometimes people said that they want to create like 5 sets of user flows and then have Omniblaze run a script that actually distributes FileMaker Pro agents into those 5 user flows so that they mimic 5 different user flows at the same time. So that's one way to use Omniblaze. And it's optional that, other people are fine with just using a single script, so you don't have to use multiple scripts. That's for the unique username for FileMaker Pro agents. The second thing is the Bill first showed a page for domain verification. The reason why we do that, we don't have to. You can just use, you should be able to use Omniblaze with any domain, but we added this layer of security because we didn't want just any potential abuse of the platform. Omniblaze can be used to pretty much DDoS any FileMaker server exposed to the internet. And so by verifying that you actually own the domain, we ensure that you're actually targeting a server that you own, that you have managerial access to. So that's a way to protect ourselves from potential abuse of the platform. And third point is the FileMaker Pro instances that were provisioned by BuildStat. So the FileMaker Pro instance is running on Windows servers. It's one FileMaker Pro instance per Windows server. So if you have, it's 20 agents, that means it's 20 Windows servers. Each of those 20 Windows servers are running one FileMaker Pro instance. That FileMaker Pro instance, I built it in a way that is so isolated that even me as an admin, I cannot go in and see what's happening. It shows up to me just as a background process. But in fact, even if I RDP to that machine, I can't see anything. And when that agent is finished, when we no longer need it, it is completely terminated and its data is wiped. So all of that is just to isolate the data, ensure your privacy as a user. And also, it's a one-layer of security to make people feel more confident about using Omniblaze with their applications. So just any cache data, any reports that you might create and save them to the documents folder or temp folders are completely wiped at the end of the agent's lifetime. Of course, everything is encrypted at rest at the disk level in AWS. And all of that is possible just because of AWS and the amazing features that we have there. Fourth point is that form that the Bill filled, where you put like the number of agents, the regions. That's pretty much the FileMaker. If you're familiar with the FileMaker Pro URL, where you put you create a URL in FileMaker Pro, you can specify username, password, server address, FileMaker file name, script name, and script parameters. We call it the FMP URL. There's a documentation page about it on Claris's website. So if you're familiar with the FMP URL, that's pretty much it. So all of that to say is Omniblaze is built in a way that is very simple to use. You don't have to learn anything new. As long as you are familiar with FileMaker, you can use Omniblaze. That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
I had to give Carl time because he's giving me a whole bunch of stuff here, and at the end of the day, the devil's in the details, right? So, yeah, it's good stuff. And thank you, Carl. Appreciate it. I'm going to make you go away now, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. So let's continue on here. Let's go to this. Actually, let's go look at this. This morning, I ran a test so you all can get some idea of the impact that you're actually having on your server. So what I'm going to grab, let's go here, and I'm going to go to my portal. So this is a link to our sort of external client management portal. I'm going to this particular host where I have that file, and I have the Datadog dashboard set up there. One of the things that we invested in beginning of last year, was our partnership not only with Monte-Cloud but with Datadog. So by default, every Soliant.Cloud instance has Datadog on it. Regardless of what the tools available to you, can use it there. We love the thing. My point in bringing it up is that if you are hosting with us, or hang on to that for a second, because I think you'll find there might be some real value there. This is built into every instance. So, I've got all kinds of correlations. So I'm going to take a look here. Let's look at the past 4 hours. I think we'll be inside our window. Yes. So you can see that I ran some tests a little earlier. Now, I'm not going to obviously go through Datadog in detail here, but what I will say this is Carl, Windcore, myself, Mike Duncan, as well as a number of others here at Soliant. I've got a lot of background. I was just talking with the gentleman that came up. He was here earlier talking about an issue that we came in and worked on with him. And, this is a conglomeration of the things that we find to troubleshoot, and disk IO process. Like this gives us insights to how not only the server is interpreting, in the subsystems, but also how the application is performing and what it's sending to that subsystem. So you can really track this down. But take a look over here on my so I can see right here early this morning, I can see I've got 200 clients running at that point in time. Here's a little blip we just did here, and I've got 20 clients running at that point in time. The nice thing here is I can see, hey, here was the impact at that point in time. And notice my pointer here is moving across all of these different methods. So my point in bringing this up is it's one thing to produce that information. If you run a Windows box, there's a number of tools. Windows, maybe you could use Performance Monitor, Datadog's an option. There's a number of things. One of the things I will caution you on is doing performance monitoring at the server has a load that it's going to give you some incorrect, invalid results sometimes because the load is capturing that and the processor's having to handle so you kind of want to offload that stuff. So this is built into our stuff, and we use this tool a lot, and this gives you the ability to kind of understand when I run that load what is happening there. So it's a pretty nice utility to do that. So I'm going to finish up with a couple of other little items here that I want to bring up about this and go back to cost real quick. So first thing I want to bring up is Carl and I have been playing around with what we want to do with this. Let me get out of here and get this to go away because it pops up every time.
It's a feature, not a bug.
It's a feature. So we have decided to open this up now. There's a lot of programs that we're in to our partnership with both AWS as well as and others. We're going to put this out here for everyone who attends this. You scan that code or just go to app.Omniblaze.Cloud. You can register. Basically, I think it's just your first name, last name. You get one free host. Don't care where it's at. Could be on-prem, could be in a third-party provider, could be in another cloud provider, could be in Soliant.Cloud. Put a pin in that. Come back to you whether that might make some sense. And 1,000 agent runtime hours. We're going to run this, let this run to the end of the month. Give you an entire month to sign up. I urge you to try this out. I think it's one of those where once you have it in your arsenal and you want to understand the impact, running a quick 10-minute test is beautiful. So sign up, give it a shot, scan that code, and then we'll go from there. So as we sort of wrap this up, what I want you to mostly walk away with from the concept of Omniblaze is it is extraordinarily cheap now to do some load testing to answer some questions. We've tried to provide all of the infrastructure leverage in our partnership there. We keep the costs down by doing what are called spot instances. Because of our provisioning capabilities, we can get really low costs on those things and provide them and hand that back to you. It's no big secret in my time at FileMaker, one of the things I really wanted to do was sort of address some of the big lifting stuff. Soliant.Cloud is a division of that. This is another extension of that, providing you guys some tools that will really make a difference in how your customers see what you put in front of them and give you a way to provide empirical evidence to that. So super excited that we've got this available. All right, so let's bolt over here. I got a few more things I'd like to share with you, but before we do, questions from here, anyone. I don't know if we can take questions remotely, Fred, or not, but I'll be more than happy to do so if they can type.
Yeah, we can take questions remotely. If you are on Teams, actually, we will hear you quite clearly. If you're in the room and you'd like to use the fancy mic, please do. Although we actually have a microphone that's been on this entire time, so I was able to pick you up earlier, Taylor. So
I speak loudly enough.
I know.
Might not lead them.
Now you'll sound even better.
Okay, so let's say we've done our test, we've compared dev versus production, and our new code is really slow. Mm-hmm. What type of information and feedback can we get from Omniblaze to help us narrow our focus and troubleshoot what the issue actually is?
Well, that's where Datadog comes in, or any other analysis tool you want. We are, like I said, we implemented it in Soliant.Cloud because we find it to be so valuable to get exactly it. Data is one thing, information is something entirely different. So you're going to pull up one of those dashboards, if you will, and you're going to be able to see a massive amount of information. This process kicked off this many threads. It correlates in time. I can pull this back up and kind of talk through it a little bit, but a good example might be, all right, here's my CPU usage during this time. What was the script that was running at that time? Where was it at its point? What system impact it had? Was it queue length? Was it network IO? Was it disk read time? Was it disk write time? Was it, a particular read behavior, a system call? I mean, as I look through here, I've got the ability to literally point out at an individual level what the individual process IDs and what they were doing. This gives you information. Did my script need to write a lot? Was it high on processor intensity? Was it a number of remote calls that I called the same? Sometimes I could throttle my application. Was it a network burst that I have to transfer this stuff? Nothing like pulling up a list view of container objects, right? So this is going to give you the insight to that. Our entire development team utilizes this methodology to do all of our troubleshooting. And that's why we've partnered with them and made that a part of our sort of standard deployment. We have it available. Now, you can go insane with these dashboards, right? But we've tried to incorporate the ones that are really valuable. We give a baseline to every client that comes on board, and then we can provide more detailed ones. The reality of it is you might be able to tune them to get individual logs, but they are extremely helpful to help you not only understand what was happening at a particular time in your application, but what the impact was on providing it as well as the impact on the hardware that's running it. Answers two things. Should I change architecture or should I add more hardware?
Thank you. That was the right answer.
Yeah, I just want to add that we also support real-time processing of top call statistics. So and mapping with TDRs. So I can share a screenshot if you want. But logs, in addition to metrics, really give us a good view of what's happening in the FileMaker application.
Yeah, I intentionally didn't turn on the logs on this one. We pulled it out of the dashboard, but yes, all of those logs are available with that. Now, there's ingestion time and things that go into that, but at the end of the day, this gives you a good idea of just how much data is available to you. I didn't talk about this real quick. Carl alluded to it, but this is a very simple test that I did here, just creating some records. But here's sort of a simple conceptual idea around writing a FileMaker script that mimics typical, or you've identified 3, 4, 5 workflows. This particular operator, persona, whatever your vernacular is on this, does these things. They go to a portal, they write records, they look up stuff, they do an edit. This particular script is just kind of a good example. I don't need to go through this. You all know how to read this. At the end of the day, you're mimicking that behavior. I can call that script, so if I do something silly here and just, I'm just going to go through and, just run this thing here. You can see that I'm going to, go through, I'm going to stop it there. I'm going to run through, I'm going to edit portals. I'm going to do a number of different things to try to mimic the kind of behavior that I might have as a user does that. And that idea of having multiple agents broken out in individual streams, these 5 agents are going to act like this persona. These 10 agents are going to act like that persona. It's extraordinarily important because it's not just about the load, it's about how different work streams and work cases work together. This particular one puts a lock on the table at a particular time, then you've got to do a transaction, but you may have a user that's coming in and doing some other things that needs access to that. With FileMaker's dependency tree, that's where you kind of get in trouble a little bit. You can anticipate when a workload is doing X, but it's more difficult to interpret how that's going to work when 5, 10, 15, 20 users are doing competitive tasks. And this is the only way I know of to expose that. So you get that real picture of this is what a day looks like from someone. So I want to point out that you can get as complex with this as you want, and you don't have to learn some external scripting tool to do that. I mean, this thing's got 72,000 records in it. You guys want to take a look at some AI stuff while we're messing around with this? Kind of derivative of this. Sure. So we'll jump into here. So intelligent extraction is the sort of category here. This is the idea of leveraging AI to do a very simple, straightforward use case. You guys had enough hype at this point on this stuff? I think we all have. These are real world cases. We are a part of a Gen AI program initiative at AWS. Anil's been heading this thing up, and I'm going to actually have him come up and talk a little bit about that here in a second. But, what we've tried to do is try to put some use cases together that we can easily project to our FileMaker practice, right? Our goal is to simplify and remove all of the heavy lifting. building up what infrastructure? How much does that cost running? There are some things going on out there that I got to be honest with you. I just want, my head wants to explode when I see what people are doing with this, because it's just such a wrong approach that we've seen. And we're really trying to remove that kind of approach to this. At the end of the day, FileMaker has its place in the world, and it does some things amazing and great. We've all built our careers on the thing. What you need to recognize is that offloading that elsewhere in some cases is a giant benefit for us. So we're moving all of that infrastructure to the cloud. We're taking advantage of cloud computing capabilities, serverless architecture, built-in bedrock guardrails for AI, scale and optimization, tunable things for low code integration. Bottom line, to integrate with AI really requires one thing. I got to write to an API. That's it. I mean, you can break all the scripts off into a million different things, and really what it fundamentally comes down to is you call an API. And you pass that API either a path to go get something or a place to go pick something up from, and then we can handle all of the pieces behind the scenes there. So let's take a look at one. This is our document extraction. So it handles documents, images, audio, video, and I think the best way to do it is just to kind of run through some stuff here. Here, let's look at the architecture real quick. So this is a super high level architecture here. The individual pieces will change and stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm going to leverage S3, which is a storage capability to drop an object into. We have a wonderful microservice for moving objects into there, which requires you to copy and paste like 2 scripts and subscribe to a service. You drop it in, hits the bucket, triggers off a Lambda function, goes into the AI engine to do the automation. It then drops the inference or the results of those into a bucket so that you can then go and you are notified of the completion of that through a webhook. Fires back to FileMaker in this case, and you can then go and retrieve that. So it's a pretty straight workflow. Now we've been looking at agentic AI and some other components that might change architecture a little bit. Fundamentally, it's doing the exact same thing. So I'm going to run this, and I'm going to ask Anil to come and talk a little bit about some of our pieces that we're evaluating and looking at. So let me come on up here, and I'll pull this up real quick, and we'll run a quick little test. So I'm going to grab a file here. Let me kick this thing off. Here is essentially a workflow that would sort of make sense. Now, this could be batch. This could be, you could come in from different directions. But bottom line, I want you to take a look at this. Here's a simple receipt. Let's do a new one here. I'm just going to grab a new receipt. So here's a simple one. Here's a Costco receipt. Simple receipt. Could be laying on a table or whatever and stuff. So I've got a lot of information in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert that into here, and then I'm going to kick off this. Now, these are what we call accelerators. You could think of them as engines to process a particular type of binary. Audio, video. This is a small list of them. We have somewhere at 68. 60. Yeah, 60 or so in our catalog right now. So we can process these as a particular type. Can pass this as a parameter and say, I want to run this particular one. So this is a receipt. So I'm going to use a simple generic one. So I'm going to send that off to the engine. So at the end of the day, it's submitted to the engine. It's pushing it up. I want to talk a little bit about where we're starting to hear all this processing.
So what this is going to do behind the scenes, after it pushes it up, we actually are leveraging AWS Bedrock to essentially read that receipt and extract a number of key things about it, right? So it'll read it to be able to take, what items were done, how much did it cost, where did you, where is the receipt from? Are there any addresses on there? Are there any, credit card information or whatnot on there? What can, all of that information will essentially get extracted without you having to specify, here's the field, here's where you need to go look at, right? It has a standard blueprint that we've been able to do. And blueprints is kind of the term that we use that describes what is the data that we want to get extracted, right? So receipts is a simplified example, but when you see some of the other use cases, being able to come in and say, hey, invoices, be able to come in and say, just documents in general, I want to be able to take audio files and be able to say, what's the sentiment? What does it sound like? So being able to pull that out, and it gives you a standard output. So you'll say, hey, this is all the information that I was able to read from the receipt. right? Now, again, these are generalized blueprints. So, eventually we'll be able to go in and actually do some
I'm gonna show you a couple of examples on that. So this thing is finished up. It's processed. It's gone through the engine. And bottom line, it's handed back to me a path to go pick up the results of that. We've implemented it this particular way because then this gives us the ability to not get gigantic responses back to the FileMaker's API. We can pass back to it a very small payload, just this. Then you can go and retrieve the smaller object at will. So whether you want to store it in FileMaker or just keep the JSON payload out there, it allows you to just go retrieve that. So all I'm going to do is go pick up that object key. I'll retrieve that. I'll decode that object, and I get get a big long JSON payload back. And you're like, well, what does this do me? So I'm going to do a simple parse of that information, and you can see, if I pull this up and look at this over here, this inference is picked up. This document records a sales transaction. It occurred on a particular date. I've captured that. The purchase of various amounts of blueprints. I've got Bluetooth care, a dining table, wine bottle. Here's the individual items on that. Here's the individual costs of those things. I get a transaction ID. This is an untuned, just generic thing. Keep in mind also, too, that we can interrogate that a little bit further. And here's where the real value comes in, because now I get back a very simple JSON payload. So I've gotten back individual line items, individual things that are associated with that. So think of it as just intelligent extraction. Do that again: audio, video, PDFs, resumes, all types of things. We've got 3 or 4 in flight right now that are utilizing this methodology, and it is extremely simple to implement this and extraordinarily powerful. One of the things about those custom blueprints I want to bring out is, you notice I've got this sort of invoice custom blueprint here. I'm not going to run it, but here's the kicker. Different formats and different things that you work with, these blueprints can be tuned from, think of it as a base level, and then you tune them down to the things that you really want to work at. Like, oh, I typically get this information here. I'm more interested in this. I'd like this to be a part of my payload. And oddly enough, actually using an AI engine to generate this blueprint, it's pretty cool. And then from an implementation perspective on you guys, I mean, I'm not joking. It's basically just a couple of scripts that you can copy and paste out of any example file. Forget about all that complexity of setting up the engine and where it's going to call to. And you just literally have to say, here's the API key. Here's where you go get it. All of that work is then offloaded, and we can tune that engine to be as speedy, as fast, to run as a failover, and even the response back to FileMaker. I've seen webhooks implemented from some providers that are running the webhooks server side. I can't even imagine that scenario. We've got clients that absolutely must verify delivery of that. If your FileMaker server goes down or there's a network communication issue there, those webhooks go into the ether and they just disappear unless you implement them out. So we've implemented queuing systems on some of ours. We're using SQS to do that, and it's ensured delivery. So it sits there in that queue, and then we finally, when the server comes up available, until we get confirmation that we received it, they just sit in the queue and operate that. So some of that industry level sort of, they're a part of this architecture there. So I'm going to pull up one more thing here real quick. I'm going to do a simple one just to kind of look at some graphics, and then we'll pull one more small one. So here's a simple image. I like this one because it's kind of fun. It's got a bunch of dogs in it, right? Some things there. All right, so shove that thing into there. Bottom line, I'm going to process this as just a general image. We're going to let that run, go and do its thing. Going to send it to the engine. I'm curious, Anil, we've been looking at a number of ways to approach this. This is a good example. What's in your head? Where are you heading? So with this coming up, right, Bill mentioned we're looking at some of the agentic workflows behind this, right? So now how do we take this information that's being extracted and actually do something? So you can think about, what agents do right now. When you talk about AI agents, you may hear about that. It's essentially, hey, we have this information right now. I want to act on it. So, can we take this and, using the receipt as an example, can we automate uploads to an expense system, right? Or can we take some of this information and actually make some intelligent decisions off of it when you're looking at invoices? Say, we're going to take 6 months worth of invoices and actually use the AI to help us, interpret. Hey, are we out of band? Are we, paying more than we should? Are we, what can we do to be able to do that? So we're adding some agents on top of this to be able to really extract out key insights that are kind of tailored to what you want to be able to do with it. One thing I did want to touch on before we get into that is that just from a security standpoint, I know a lot of people are like, why do, when we upload these images, these files, the sensitive data,
what happens to it. And the reason we leverage AWS Bedrock for that, right, is as part of our partnership, we're able to see that the models that are used, the AI engine that's used, is actually brought to the data. So this information is not actually being sent off to Anthropic or any of the other providers. It's staying within the data boundary that we have in place. So guardrails, controls, auditing, all that's in place to be able to see, what's happening with the data. Bill mentioned we're storing in S3, so we have the durability in there. But from a security standpoint, that data and the information that's extracted doesn't actually make it back to the model provider, so it's not being used to train these models going forward.
It's a cautionary tale that you need to be aware of. I mean, I don't want this to come off wrong, but at the end of the day, if you don't really have the cloud expertise, you do things in some weird ways. I mean, it is an individual client that you've got to have an understanding of guardrails and implementation of that, the cloud. I mean, simple stuff like how the VPC is organized, how you set up the networking inside there, how do things communicate, where do they operate? There are people out there doing shared hosting models where they're putting stuff in the same VPCs and they're doing stuff in the same accounts and they're doing like shared instances and stuff. We very specifically went through some hard work to make sure that we have the right type of cloud implementation. And I've got the documentation around and the certifications to show it. We'll talk a little bit about that, but we've really taken a hard look at security and wrap it up so that either you as the client or you as a operator from Harmonic or customer that you want to set up and you want to implement these types of things, it is wrapped around a very secure private model where none of that stuff exceeds and moves outside of that. And anything in transit is communicated and encrypted, and anything stored is communicated and encrypted, and the blueprints around AI are all wrapped around those guardrails. So I wanted to stress the point that it's about the architecture of the unit, it's about the implementation of the cloud, it's about how you utilize those engines. So this is one piece of that. I'm going to move into talking about sort of an MCP development here. So let's move over there.
Yeah, so one thing that we've been working on around MCPs, for those of you who are familiar with the term and those are not, your applications that are out there, how do we make them AI enabled? How do you AIify these applications? Make it so that way these AI agents, chatbots, whatever that are out there right now can actually talk to, interact with your application. Previously when we wanted to talk to it, we used HTTP. That's the web protocol, right? But now with AI, there's another protocol, MCP, that's basically a way of AI agents to be able to talk to an application. A lot of times, what you'll see is, what Bill's showing here is, we've leveraged some of this with Soliant.Cloud, but we've also learned a lot of things from that. And one is, while there's a lot of APIs that may be available, right, both from FileMaker and elsewhere, it's important to understand that the MCP is only as good as what you tell it and what you tailor to, right? So a lot of places, what they'll do is they'll take an existing API and say, hey, this is going to be, I'm going to use the exact same API structure. And what does that mean? That means that you're going to see a lot of, bad performance, wrong data, lookups, load on your system that doesn't need to be there. And it's just going to be a lot of churn. So what we've learned is that as we built these things out, we've learned how to actually tailor these MCPs and actually tailor how an AI, whatever a chatbot, whatever you want to be able to work with, how does it actually interact with it? How do you make sure that there's guardrails so that it doesn't, overload your data? How do you make sure that what gets returned isn't overloading, the capacity on the server? And how do you make sure more importantly, how do you make sure that what's being provided is something that your user actually cares about? Like, you can hit the OData API, 10 different times, doing 10 different things to get one thing done. But is that really the most efficient way to do it? So while we leverage some of those API calls, we've been able to kind of tune it to be able to say, let's make it more specific. And, in addition to that, right, we're actually able to go and actually use OData to execute scripts. So it kind of gives you a direct tie-in to, I have a script that actually is set up to do something already. Now, how do I take that script and make it so that I can execute it via an AI agent? So.
And so what we've done, I think we built our first OData connection with an MCP to the admin console, and I've seen people that release those. I talked to our whole team, I'm like, I don't know how useful this is, and here's the usefulness of it, I guess. It's an interesting exercise in what can you do. But I think what really comes down to matter is how do you take that technology, how do you apply it to use cases, right? So we decided to take a shot at learning about the architecture, and then we throw something at our Soliant.Cloud portal. So our portal is designed to provide access to backend infrastructure for everybody who hosts with us. And so I've been playing around with this while Anil was talking. So I asked this agent here, give me a list for all the hosts. And they came back and gave me a list for the ones ones that are assigned to me. I mean, there are thousands of clients in there, and then I've asked a little bit about, hey, provide me some information about, our particular infrastructure. I'm going to kick off another thing and say, okay, what actions are available for that particular host? I want you to follow this because this is the kicker right here. What actions are available for my host? What do you think that is?
Actions from host.
What can I do with this host? What do you think that translates to? They're scripts. They're FileMaker scripts. They're business logic. They're tools. You'll hear all kinds of different terms. Here's the deal. When someone goes, think of it this way, someone goes to your website or you're in the FileMaker interface, you need to do something. You've got a set of those that tie together as a workflow, as a case, right? I'm going to do X. The MCP, agentic AI, multiple MCP calls, whatever it is directly creating tools that map to that. So what I've said is, listen, I have this thing here that I'm letting people interact with. I'm going to create a couple of tools so that my MCP server can interact with that particular application. They fundamentally are scripts. And it also has some logic in here. So, I asked it here, just said, tell me about the infrastructure. It tells you about that here. I've got these regions. Here's what I'm operating. Here's the hosts that are available to there, what I can do with them. So let's try to do something with them. So here we're looking at a development box, and I'm going to pull this guy up right here. So this is this particular box that I'm interested in talking to. So I'm going to ask it. I'm going to say restart. Let's go with the scripting engine. I'm not going to tell it which one I'm talking about. It will come back and ask me, or I can be very direct on FMS dev -00. So I'm going to kick that thing off, and it's going to go out, talk to the MCP. It's going to see what tools it has available to it. It's going to ask it, say, oh, this is what you're talking about. This is your firm. I might even need it to validate. Do I want it to restart?
Yep.
I know you have something to jump in there because we were talking about this earlier.
Yeah. So, as these things evolve, right? AI is evolving. It gives you the ability to actually, hey, if you give it incomplete information, it'll actually ask you, hey, I'm missing some information. I need more. But one other thing to call out is, this could be a pretty disruptive process that we're kicking off here. Like, hey, go restart scripts, go restart the server. So what this is actually doing is, even though we're interacting through a chatbot, it's leveraging the same authentication that we use for the portal. So as Bill's logged in, it's logged in as him and using the same authentication mechanism that we would be using. So it ties into existing authentication, existing permissions. So that way, only those who are authorized to can actually execute this. So while these tools may come back and say, hey, I can restart, if you go to restart and you're not authorized to, it won't let you. So that's some of the capabilities that we want to make sure that, as this standard becomes more solidified, and as we're able to come in and spin these things up in a different way, we're able to actually execute and run these in a secure way, but also something that we can scale.
So in addition, I want to show the complexity around this. So we have something called dynamic doc. You don't need to understand all the details to get the concept of the demonstration here, but there is a lot of logic to that. It builds up what we call a schedule. So here I'll look at the dynamic docket on this, and it is a schedule of what we want the instance to do on a daily basis: stop, start, upgrade, change instance size, whatever it may be. And you've got a schedule, you've got the concept of whether that is enabled or not. So I'm going to shout at this agent just to see. So I asked it, help me configure the dynamic docket, and I'd love to do so. I've nerfed some things to happen on the back end so we can safely do these things. But at the end of the day, I'm going to ask it now and say, okay, set up the docket to start at, say, 5 a.m. and stop at 7 p.m. I better put a.m. so it's clear. I don't want it to ask me.
Dynamic FileMaker solution.
So dynamic docket is basically a setting that we have in a Soliant.Cloud instance that I can set it up so that it doesn't run all the time. I can say, hey, it's done at work at night, or shut it down at 7 o'clock at night. Make sure it's up and running so you don't have to run and incur 24/7 charges for the thing. It also is great for a development environment. We spin it up when we want. We just say, hey, start this thing at 8 in the morning, or manually start at 8 in the morning, do your testing and shut the thing down. I mean, we have at least 50 different development boxes that are running, and it makes a big difference on charges. So this is a tool to say, go do this on our server. Does that make sense? So I'm talking to it. I'm just saying, okay, and so I'll set up and start or I'll say stop at 7 p.m. weekdays. So I've asked it to go and do this for me. So again, I could have gone through the interface and clicked on this, and it's asking me which specific host do I want to do this on. You see how the logic there understands I need to be specific about it? I'll just tell it. I'll say, how about FMS dev-00. So say, okay, go do that. And it's going to go and run that script with the parameters that we have specified in the tool and the guardrails that we would supply to that so that it knows to go and perform the action, particularly on that thing. So it says, I've configured the dynamic docket. It picked up the idea that I asked it to do at 5 and 7, weekends and the Sundays, no scheduled actions are going to happen. Let's go check that real quick. So if I look over here, do dynamic docket, let's do a quick refresh here a little bit, see if it pops open. It should show up in our portal as that, that particular action, has occurred. But at the end of the day, we configure with this and we're able to issue those commands. And then lastly, you can obviously do all kinds of things with issuing support tickets and capturing that information and up that quite a few numbers. So anything you want to add? Well, I'm going to talk about one more thing.
Yeah, so just as we talk about this, right, we've mentioned a few times we're leveraging, the power of AWS and the ability that comes with that. Some of the things that are coming out are from AWS or some managed platforms, some ways that we can actually scale this in a way that's in a serverless way, right? So right now, previously, these MCPs are just applications that would need to be hosted like anything else. And instead of having to pay 24/7 for them, we have the ability to scale. And we're leveraging some newer solutions from AWS that allow us to do it in a serverless way. So this now gives you the ability to say, hey, I'm going to connect my application to an AI, let my users interact with it, but I don't want to pay for it until they're actually interacting with it. So it gives a little more flexibility, a little more scalability. Behind the scenes also helps us, solidify some better logging, some better things like that we can take advantage of. But at the end of the day, this is a solution that AWS is coming to the table with. They say, hey, this is how they're opinionated on how to host these types of solutions. And also to scale to a much larger capacity than maybe 25, 30 tools, we can now scale to 500 to 1,000 tools, scripts and calls that we can do just leveraging what's available to us.
Yep. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. But Anil come spend the day with me. We got to grab a good dinner last night, and I needed him to hear because he's way, way, way smarter than I'll ever be. So I'm glad he was here. So I want to close up, and I want to talk to a couple of small things. I know we're short on time here.
You're not sure on time.
We're okay?
You're good on time.
Excellent. All right.
Up to 15 minutes.
Oh, excellent.
We lunch 12.
Excellent. I love it. Thanks, Anil. I appreciate it. So I don't want to go into too much here, but I want to give you some background on this because I'm going to give you a little bit of an announcement. So we have heavily invested in Soliant as an AWS partner. We've gone through Register. We've gone through Select. We're now Advanced Tier. We will probably achieve Premier Tier probably sometime next year. We're on target for it. We're working on our MSP certification, our partner program, or cloud delivery, our well-architected partner. We get into special incentives and programs based on that. And we have all kinds of certifications. I mean, I think we've even got some additional, you've got some additional Google Cloud certifications. So, but everything from advanced networking and security, DevOps, development, we've really invested in this. We believe it is part of the future. I believe it is also part of the FileMaker future for sure. Deploying out in that way and being able to take advantage of cloud services. AI is just but one model there. We've all been through changes in our careers. I can remember that I wish my COBOL program was still valuable, but it's not so much anymore. Fortran. So my point is, it's just an evolving architecture. Make sure we do this right, and you can get some really great results in this. We kicked off our Gen AI initiative about 6 months ago. We've gone through multiple different assessments. I think we're somewhere around 15, 20 use cases that we are actively building projects for. We're super excited about one that actually has a whole robotics controller in it, and we're communicating using AI to drive the robotics of that. And it's with a very large customer. We're super excited about that and a couple of other ones there. So it is a part of our world. Get ready, and we're going to try and help you get there in a really, quite honestly, hopefully as simplistic way as possible. I'm glad that we're inventing this and put some scope behind it. I want to let y'all know about our SOC 2 Type 2 certification. So as far as I know, we are now the only provider in the FileMaker space doing SOC 2 Type 2. Let me give you an idea of what that means. It is a significant investment. I don't know, we probably spent 15 grand or so to make sure we had this for our so you go, well, not a huge deal, but in terms of cost, but it is when you try and keep margins down. The big thing here is Type 2. Anybody go through Type 1? It's a moment in time. They take a look at some stuff, they look through it, and they give you that certification. We don't buy that. The cloud changes, environments change, everything changes. We have modified our stuff internally multiple times this year, and it is a continuous evolution of that. We are under contract through Sprinto to have an evolution. Monthly, there's some things that go on. Quarterly, there's some things, and then annually, there's some things that go on. Our entire environment is audited for SOX 2 Type 2 compliance ongoing. You can be rest assured then, as long as you're maintaining this, that your environment and every implementation, our code as infrastructure, deployments, and our tools that we use are underneath this. They give us the HIPAA stuff to be able to allow you to say that you got that. They give us a number of different ISOs, education stuff. We have a very large, I can't use their name, but a very large higher education client of ours that has completely done everything from level what they call data 1 through data 4, and we passed that certification for them. You can take our Trust Center approach there, take a look at it there. We also do an annual cyber risk assessment. This comes up all the time, which means your last risk assessment, denial of service stuff, access to backends, are things encrypted. We do that annually with a third party called CyberGX. I think their name's Process Unity now. My point is we take this extraordinary seriously. We put a lot of money into it. If you're going to host, make sure your provider's doing these things, because if they are not, it is literally just a matter of time until either the industry requires it, your customer requires it, and you need to make sure that they're getting done first. So I'm happy to report we finally have achieved that, and we are on evolution towards that moving forward. So that's why I'm bringing this up. Quite honestly, we're probably not the least expensive company expensive out there doing hosting. I'll totally admit to it, and I'll tell you why. Because we invest in that stuff. We put money back into our implementations, our orchestration, our code, how we develop things, everything from microservices to not doing legacy type, to run it on the server type stuff, and we put it into the environment so our clients can be secure there. However, due to that, we have had insane growth over the last couple of years. Because of our programs with AWS, we're going to do this. It is a free hosting offer for 1 year. Now, you simply sign up, we'll bring up your account, we'll implement all of that stuff, and you will be able to choose from a baseline implementation. Our baseline is FileMaker recommended hardware, is amount of disk space for what we think makes sense for swap area. And, we're not under provisioning is my whole point. You're also not sharing with anyone. That's how you save cost, right? You share you put other people on your same server, or you put other people in your environment. Or you put all your stuff into one thing, or you run an operating system that's cheap because it's decided to be that, there's some advantages there, or you run Docker, other. At the end of the day, we've been through all of this. Matter of fact, we spent our first 3 years deciding which way we would go with this. I can prove it, I can test it, I can show you. There's reasons why we do it the way that we do. Anyway, we got into these programs, and we are going to be able to offer this. So bottom line, if you got a client or you want to test something out, those of you who are going to do Omniblaze, throw your development box up there. Take it for a year for free. Take it for a spin. Try out Omniblaze and just put your test files up there. You'll be able to run them in the cloud. You'll be able to do that. There's a couple of rules around it, like our base implementation will be covered, but if you want to increase your instance to say from a T3, which is a 2 processor, 8 gig of memory, and you want to double those things, go to 4 processors now, you'll still get the full credit for that month for that. And then you just pay for the differences in those things. It's a great opportunity for you to try us out, and especially with the Omniblaze stuff, to have the ability to, just test up in the cloud and throw your stuff up in there. So I urge you to give it a shout out. I'm super excited. We've been working on this for a while, and the well-architected partner program status has allowed us to get there. So a couple of codes are going to pop up here and do that, but I'll be more than happy to take a couple of questions if we've got.
Out of curiosity, I know Hanzo's group's been publishing a bunch of comparisons of performance based on their benchmarks, based on different levels of hardware. You guys ever publish any results of comparing performance between the different Amazon levels? Because I don't see, at least in regards to FileMaker, much comparisons of those out there.
Running on particular hardware?
Well, right, because one of the things always is with, which tier you're going to choose, and I have a real hard time,
Here's the beauty. I know exactly where you're coming from. You never really know two things, like what kind of hardware should I get? Where should it be located? Am I going to get better performances? Should I have 2 processors, 4, 8? How much memory should I have? What should my subsystem be? it's irrelevant in our world. And here's why. Start off with a tier. I can change you at a moment's notice. If you'll allow me to reboot, we can put a new hardware. I can double your hardware just like that, right? I can put those things into place. You can do testing. Now you've got Omniblaze. You can determine, should I stay at this T3? Should I go to a T2 extra large? Should I go to an M5, a 7i Flex? Who cares? The point is you don't have to invest in buy that hardware. Remember the days you had to spec out for worst case scenario, right? Yeah. Well, in a couple of years we might need 8 processors, or we might need 4. So you buy that and it sits there in this little state, and you're spending a bunch of money. At the end of the day, try it out, run some tests, and then we just flip and switch to different instance types. So do I care really to publish performance numbers for a T3 and a 2-3X? It's irrelevant, because your application is going to make a determination of that. Your architecture is going to make a determination. What you really need is to say, with this variable, my application. With this variable, number of users. With this variable, number of locations that I need to get to. It performs well in the US, doesn't perform well over here, or maybe London or Australia, whatever. Run your tests, and then we can choose the hardware appropriately for it. And it's a simple change. Make sense? Does that help? You bet. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work with Amazon TextRact, which, if you aren't familiar, it sounds like you probably are, you're nodding.
Been down
It returns a very, very large response, and it has to be navigated, parsed, and everything. We're doing that. So is Bedrock, in comparison to TextRact, is that more of a, like, describing the output that you want to an agent, and then it's responding with just those bits, or is it?
Yeah.
How does it compare to TextRact?
About 4 questions.
Okay, well, let's put it this way. The Bedrock solution that we use essentially builds on top of TextRact and a few other things. So it actually takes a lot of the services that you may have previously seen with AWS, TextRact, recognition, and a few of these others. And depending on what you're asking for, it actually picks the right one for you, and that's how it pulls the information. So there's certain things that get sent to an AI agent. There's certain things that get sent from TextRact and recognition when you're doing image recognition data. And then when we talk about that standard blueprint that gets spit out, instead of having to go and parse through all of those different types of data, it standardizes it into one output. So it can get you the depth that you're looking for, but it also gives you a lot of additional information. Like TextRact doesn't instead give you a summary, right? Or it doesn't give you some of the, like if you're doing images with recognition, it doesn't give you bounding boxes as easily. It gives you some, but not the whole thing. This also gives you the ability to say, hey, I'm going to I see a table in my document, and I want to extract that as a CSV file, right?
We're doing, yeah.
Yep. So that's some of the capability that comes in by kind of combining all of these things into one tool, right? We have a solution with Bedrock. So we're leveraging Bedrock for that, and behind the scenes, it kind of pieces all that together for us. And when we customize it, that's when we start talking about adding kind of an agentic layer on top, where we can say, hey, now I want to be sure that pull this information from the top left corner, right? Or I want this data in particular extracted. It's able to do that, but again, it feeds it all as back into those native services, and then adds some layers on top.
You talked earlier about the importance of investing in the future for Soliant, and that's very much in sync with how we feel here at Harmonic. If you wouldn't mind, if you had to estimate, ballpark, whether in time or dollars, how much R&D would you say Soliant has invested in AI specifically, and AI in combination with the tools that we now have in FileMaker specifically, versus the, hey, I can go do stuff with AI?
Yeah, I think it's a super question, and I'll be more than happy to address it. How much have we spent? More than I care to. The reality of it is, it's here. Anil has been instrumental in guiding us in an architecture that leverages the cloud. In our particular case, AWS, whatever your opinion is on what cloud providers are. At the end of the day, we feel it's important for our future. We feel it's important for our clients' future. Now, again, I'm trying to avoid hype, and just get caught up in it. We're trying to find real use cases. So, when you talk about dollars, it's difficult to say. But I will say from a man-hour perspective, here's an interesting thing. So we got caught up in the Gen AI project, which allowed us to go after, I think we picked 6 clients initially in use cases that we kind of identified. What we have been trying to do there is invest in identifying those individual work cases that have a real benefit to them. And I'm talking about ROI, I'm talking about headcount reduction, I'm talking about, reduction in cycles, things that can really make a difference for them to get away from this. Look at what this interesting thing can do. As developers, we have a tendency to sort of look at my pretty baby, and we really have tried to approach that. And Anil has been instrumental in putting that together. So I think it's important for us as just developers in general, as tech people, to realize that this is here to stay. We need to develop a skill set around it. I realize the complexity of it, which is why we're trying to, remove some of those heavy lifting burdens and not have to do all of the sort of prescriptive guidance we've been getting in some directions, and really start thinking about the fact that these are big, large language models, and FileMaker can participate in that world, but you got to implement them the right way, right? And, you wrap in security and wrap into that. We put the whole year for sure, we've probably been looking at it steadily now for maybe almost 2 years. And over the last year, I would say 80% of your day for sure, and maybe a little bit, and maybe 50 to 60% of it in the other development team. I mean, even our FileMaker development team is working on integrations at this point and working on, specific use cases. So it's part of our world. Does that help? Did I miss any part of it?
Very much. Appreciate for sharing.
Yep. How about one fun one just for the end? I found this very interesting to me, and the way that the AI component for the extractor worked. I'm just gonna pull this video up here real quick. Test examples.
You really like this one, don't you?
I do love this one. I love this one. So the background on this is, I wanted to understand just how much it could pick up in terms of what it sees in the video. Not just the physical description, but the things around it, the tone, the sentiment, how that works. So I'm not going to play the audio because I can describe it to people, but this is my daughter and I having a little interaction about, hey, her feet got wet because she went fishing with me. So I'll play a little bit so you can hear a little bit of the audio. Okay. So you get the idea. Thank you. There we go. So anyway, so that's going along there. So I threw this at the engine. I want you to see. So as a young girl with blonde hair experiences a minor mishap while fishing, falling into the lake to her knees, she is seated in the backseat of a car during what appears to be a family outing with her father. I'm not on video. I'm only on audio. You never see me in the video. She's wearing a pink shirt with a strawberry design. I think you all saw that in the video there. He attempts to comfort her by explaining that such incidents of falling into the lake happen, and she gets her foot wet, and he suggests removing her wet socks and reassures her that everything will be fine. So it's understanding not only the words that I'm using, but my intent, and you can see some of the emotion there. And as they continue the journey through a forested area, it's seeing the background, right? It sees the trees in the background. The girl's mood shifts dramatically, initially just stressed and crying, and soon transforms into a joyful, laughing child. This is where I decide that no matter what I say to her, she's not going to get happy because her feet are wet, right? So what I said was, hey, that package showed up. And I know that you can't necessarily see it, but she literally goes from bawling to, what package? What package? It picks up that tone, and it's just they share a tender moment. I tell her I love her, and that she's gonna, we're gonna go get that package. My point is that I was really impressed with just this generic based stuff. It picks up tone, sentiment. We've got a particular client that we're working on with right now that we're doing audio extraction, and it was wanting to pick up both all those things of that tone. Our initial analysis showed some pretty interesting results for that.
Yep, and going back to what Bill's referring to, where we try to find use cases and kind of work backwards from there, right? So in that audio one in particular, for example, we're picking up, service calls, right? We're picking up, hey, what was the tone of a customer when they're interacting with the client, right? What did they do with, did they start mad? Did they get madder, right? Or did they, what was the resolution? And then being able to take all that information, extract it out, even things like, hey, this is what the solution was, and going back to the agentic side, feeding that into hey, here's what your knowledge base is. So now you don't have to sit there and remember to, mine all this data that you may be on a support call for. Those support call reps are automatically, as the call is happening, it's automatically updating the knowledge base as it goes. Going back to those types of use cases that are actually providing value, right? And one thing I did want to just touch on real quick is around, when we come up with these use cases, there's kind of two buckets, right? One is how do you automate what you already do and make it really well and better, right? And then one is how do you change the way you approach business? How do you change the way that you approach the problems that you may tackle, right? So with some of these things, we have the ability to be able to say, what would happen if I could take 100 different processes and run them at the exact same time that are all extracting different things? It's an approach that's a little bit different. So as we come up with these use cases, that's what we try to come to the table with is, okay, how, one is how can we do what we're doing better, but also how can we kind of evolve and really transform the way things are being done.
Last thing I'll show you is you have to be careful of inference.
I think there's
Sorry?
Go ahead, you're saying.
This is literally the last thing. So this is a picture of this motorcyclist here. They're riding a motorcycle through this. I want you to see what it picked up without any guidance and improper training. At one point, a person is seen riding a small boat or canoe down the stream. Now, I don't know if that is an inference that's because it just lacks the information and context, or it shows the insanity of the individual doing that. I'm not sure which, but anyway, thank you all for coming today. Thank you all remotely. I appreciate it.
Please click on that QR code. There is a survey. You are welcome to take that survey. Thank you all so very much. And now for those of you who are not here, you're going to miss out on fajitas. Sorry about that. Have a great one.